Oh, I know what I need.
Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good. Definition of a good-looking person, always looking for and finding the good in life. That's the essence of a good-looking person. And I would say, I'm going to venture out on a very thick bough, a limb on the tree, and make the categorical statement that the best way to be good-looking is to be involved in marriage. Yes, I'm putting in a plug for marriage. Now, today's Marriage with Joy is, let me see, this is the end of the month of March, and we've gone past the vernal equinox. We are already a week or so into springtime, and it's really beautiful. You can feel it. It feels blossoming. It feels verdant. It feels like there's something happening. And for many hundreds of millions of people, maybe even billions of people around the planet, this is what's called Holy Week, because it's going up. I think Sunday is what they call Palm Sunday. And then, is it Easter this Sunday? I forget. This Sunday is Easter? Oh, I can't hear you, Maura. We can't hear you.
You're right, because I muted myself. I'll let you know. Let me not tell stories out of school, Barry.
Okay, I think Palm Sunday is it's either this Sunday is Easter or last Sunday was.
No, it's the 31st. The 31st is Easter Sunday.
Okay, so this is Palm Sunday, so it's Holy Week. It's also a very interesting time. It is March 27th, and I want to note on the calendar the passing of a very great man. And I mention it for several reasons. Number one, because I actually was able to shake his hand one time. Obviously, I can't say I knew him. I shook his hand one time, and I was always enamored of him. We have different political persuasions, but it didn't matter because he came from what we'll call, for want of a better term, the old school of politics, which was, you're not my enemy, we just have different opinions. And if I can persuade you, that's great. And if you can persuade me, I'm willing to listen. And that is the man named Joe Lieberman. As we say, may his soul be for a blessing. May his name be for a blessing. He just passed away last night at the age of 82, which is relatively young. And I believe the information I was getting over the internet, as everybody else is getting, he fell down a week or so ago, and that caused some complications, and he passed away. So I mentioned it for three reasons. Number one, because he was a fine man. He was an observant Jew. He was dedicated to the religion. He ran as the vice presidential candidate during the year 2000, a very consequential year in the calendar and certainly in American politics, because that particular election for president and vice president, he and Al Gore, his running mate, or the other way around, they won the popular vote. They lost in the Electoral College, and it was decided by the Supreme Court. It was a very interesting, fascinating time. And here's what was most amazing about it. There were no riots in the streets. There was upset. People were gnashing their teeth, Democrats especially. There were no riots. There was no destruction. It was transition of power. So much different than a mere 24 years later, a quarter of a century, with so much turmoil in the intervening 24 years. So that was one thing. The second thing was that his name is very interesting. His name was Joseph, or in the biblical name, one of the great people in the Bible, the son of Jacob. His last name is Lieberman, and Lieber or Liebe in German means dear or beloved one. He was a dearly beloved man. I mean, he really was. He grew into his name. He exuded at that gentleness, that softness, and yet a very powerful, capable politician. I mean, he was a politician, and especially coming from the state of Connecticut. You know, you don't tip through the tulips and become, a senator, a state senator, and a what do you call it, United States senator. The other thing that I find most fascinating is that I knew him later in life. So I shook hands one time. He was married to his current wife, Hadassah, for I think it's 42 years, which is a good long time. He was previously married to another woman, and that was for 16 years. So he was a serial monogamist. He was married a total of 58 years. That speaks well. And he's beloved by many millions of people. I once heard him speak. I think it was either Sean Hannity show or maybe it was Dennis Prager
or Michael Medved.
Oh, I think it was Hugh Hewitt. Well, he was certainly on Michael's show, but I heard him on Hugh Hewitt. And Hugh Hewitt, who's a religious Christian, asked him a question about the biblical verses of giving blessings to children that Jews do every Friday evening. Men bless the sons, and women bless their daughters, and also husbands often bless the daughters, and use the quotations from the Bible. May the Lord keep you and preserve you and shine his countenance upon you and bring about grace for you and your family. And he said it over so lovingly, so sweetly in the original Hebrew and in English. And I think it was Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt was literally speechless for about 4 or 5 seconds. It was so real because that was America. It was America. It was a different place. There's no question. I'm joking. I'm sorry. And he's gone now. And his last act as a politician, even though he's retired many years now, he wrote an article that was published in the op-ed in the Wall Street Journals just last week. Yeah, it was Thursday last week. Taking to task, but in a wonderfully gentle, caring way, Senator Chuck Schumer for what he did in the Senate, accusing Israel and just not being gracious. And Senator Lieberman graciously said how much he enjoyed working with Senator Schumer over decades, and then called him out and said, in this case, you're wrong, and did it forcefully, but with wit and aplomb. I mean, that was the caliber of the people we used to have. I'm sure there are some still around. I don't know. I can't tell you their names, but I'm hoping for the sake of the world, not just America, for the sake of Western civilization and the world, we need to continue to raise up wonderful beings like this. So that's another piece I wanted to say. And Lori, welcome. It's always a delight to see you. We have our quadrants here. We have wonderful Dr. Diane Medved up in the great Northwest. And down in the extreme Southeast is wonderful Maura Sweeney. And in the great Southwest, holding down the beaches, is wonderful Lori McDermott. And in the desert, the blossom in the desert, your gentle, wonderful, humble host, Barry Shore, the ambassador of joy. And as I was making mention, I am very touched to be in the presence of such wonderful people and to be doing this webinar that we do once a month. And I got to tell, I'm telling ladies, but I'm telling everybody's listening, because thank God we have thousands of people who actually listen and they get the recording and they send in information. People love it. It's making a difference. And that's really the genius of life, to be able to be mad, to make a difference. And I'm going to just do a small opening and then obviously bring it up to these wonderful beings to comment and such. The name of this particular webinar is called Marriage with Joy, because if it's not done with joy, it will just be a marriage, which in and of itself is a good thing. It's a great institution. It doesn't enable one to become a Lieber man or Lieber woman, which means dear and beloved. And that's really what happens, in my humble opinion, with marriage. The ability for a single unit called a human being to be involved with another single unit called a human being, and somehow to find a permeable like atmosphere that can translate and elevate both of them into a different realm. Literally, you could be living here on this earth and yet be walking in a different realm. That's kind of amazing, isn't it? To be able to be on the physical and in the spiritual exactly the same time. That's how I view marriage, with joy. And as I said, we're blessed that we have a great group here. And I sent out, before we began this particular session, something about 2 interesting books that are out in the world at the moment. And I just want to make mention before I do that marriage, especially even in the United States of America, which is the last bastion, by the way, of Western civilization. Every place else around the world is really under the gun, and I think may have succumbed already. The UK, Ireland, Scotland. I mean, Ireland, you would have thought, well, that's a great Irish Catholic country. Hello, abortion on demand, anytime you want, just go do it, kill him. Okay, sorry, I'm showing my my bias. France gone, most of Europe is gone. Maybe there's a few pockets left. The United States is that bulwark against the headwaters of the potential demise of Western civilization. What keeps us alive is marriage. And for the first time, at least in recorded history in the United States, marriage is on a precipitous decline. It's not just, it's going down a little bit year over year, precipitous decline. And I believe I read recently, for the first time ever, there are more Americans dying than are being born. Now you say, big deal. We got hundreds of millions of us here. Well, it is a big deal, because if you continue along this pathway and marriage is no longer part and parcel of the human experience in America, and there are more Americans dying than are being born, you'll have an upside down economy. You'll have a difficulty for people to succeed, and you can bring about a dystopia rather quickly, because economics follows other things, and it's a problem. Okay, so on that high note, my dear beloved friends, we're going to talk about 2 books and ideas. So the 2 books that I had mentioned, I sent out, were reviewed in the Wall Street Journal recently, is a book called Get Married. And the subtitle, part of the subtitle was, oh, thank you, Diane, is Get Married and Save Civilization. Okay, it's a little bit blurry, but we get the idea.
I can make it clear.
Oh, there it is. Yes, that's a great picture, isn't it? Yes, that's why. Okay, thank you. So Get Married and Save Civilization. And the other book is called Family Unfriendly. Now, it's a deceptive title, because really it's about being very friendly family. However, there are many barriers in the United States of America today that do not enhance or make it easy for people to raise families. And the fun part about this particular book, Family Unfriendly, written by a man named Tim Carney, he's the father of 6. So he knows something about raising a family. By the way, okay, I'm going to go to you, Diane, just a moment. I remember a movie, and I don't go to movies. I think I've been to 3 movies in the past 2 years. There was a movie that I was growing up. I think the main person, it was a guy named Clifton Webb. Nobody knows that name anymore. Anyway, it was called Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yes. I remember that movie. I thought you were going to say that. Yeah.
I think it was, they made a remake of it with Steve Martin or something like that. But the idea of having a family with 12 kids is, okay, it does happen. I mean, Diane knows, because one of her teachers has 19 children. Hello. Yes, 19.
Well,
One
there were
woman, one wife, one husband. Okay, and and remarkably normal. Well, no, they're not normal. I mean, but they are regular people. It's
No twins.
sorry.
a set of triplets, and there is also a set of twins. And unfortunately, they lost a baby also. So there was 19, now there's 18.
Right. But the idea of large family, I mean, let's be blunt, 6 is a large family. In today's world, 3 is a large family, right? Because people are not having. So I want to just go right over, and we don't have particular questions, even though I can give you lots of questions that come in, because the title of today's webinar or podcast is really Marriage Under Siege. And I think it is. That's me. I'm just telling you what I think. So Diane, you're our leadoff batter as usual, and great. And we're happy that you do. Let's just, if you be so kind, speak about the idea that marriage is under siege, and what your thoughts about these 2 particular books, Get Married and Family Unfriendly.
Well, first of all, I have to say that many of the points that are made in Get Married, who has been the author of whom Brad Wilcox was a guest on my husband's show, his radio show.
Wait a minute. I want to mention again Michael Medved's radio show, and Brad Wilcox was the guest.
And then there's a listen live button, and you can just ping that and hear him live. Or if you become a Medhead, you can listen as a podcast at any time with no commercials.
Well,
and very worthwhile. In any case, this author was one of the many amazing guests that my husband has on his show. But he makes points that, okay, my plug, I say my book on divorce. And I have to say that one of the forces that is keeping marriage less desirable for people is the idea that there had been so much divorce, and many people are children of divorce. And they know firsthand how difficult and how emotionally permanently scarring divorce is for children. I have a chapter in my book, Children Are Not Resilient. Everyone thinks, well, we'll get a divorce and the children will just bounce back. If you're thinking of getting a divorce and you have children, you need to put them first and consider if there's any way you can patch up the differences, rebuild the marriage, and give them a solid home. Because your example is going to deter them, should you get divorced, from wanting to get married later on. Because it's a traumatic experience for everyone involved. I call it ruinous ripples. The grandparents are shattered by it. There are so many different ramifications to everyone's life that once you're married and have children, you should do everything that you can to stay together. Now, in terms of Get Married, the book Get Married, he talks about other things I cover, such as all the benefits that accrue to those who are married. Having a soulmate, having someone to share life's problems, having someone with whom to build what I call the family project. It gives your life purpose. It gives you a direction. It gives you someone to bounce ideas off, as we say in Jewish and Hebrew, an ezer kenegdo, someone who can look at you and give you the honest reaction with your welfare, not only in mind, but knowing that your welfare is his or her welfare as well. You're a team, you're a partnership. Mm-hmm. And to face life with someone who is your partner and is your teammate gives you the double strength of 2 people that you can't have with one person. No matter how many friends you have, no matter how many wonderful relatives you have, when you are bonded to someone else with whom you are sharing life's direction, then you have a strength that you can't get in another way. That in itself should bring joy, to know you have someone. Waking up every day, when I turn over in bed and I see my husband there, I get the warm fuzzies. Even in the middle of the night when I'm going to trudge into the bathroom and I see him lying in bed, it's like, yes, there's somebody there for me. And he's going to be there, and he's going to be positive in terms of what I do, what I write. I write an article and he reads it and he says, oh, you're such a great writer. Thank you. It's very good when an editor tells you that, but it's even better in a way when your partner, who's looking for errors to correct, is telling you that, because you know this is somebody who is willing to give you criticism for your benefit, as well as willing to give you praise. And so many other people in the world don't want to give you criticism nowadays. It's
By the
very
way,
hard.
I want to interrupt you for a moment. Let's actually put on pause. And again, I'm saying this because I know Michael Medved, one of the more capable beings on the planet in terms of writing and communicating. I mean, he's written a dozen books, maybe more, and he's a great communicator, both verbally and otherwise. And the ability for a husband to critique a wife's, or vice versa, writing is seemingly fraught with difficulty. And yet, the genius of what you're discussing here, Diane, is that that's the greatest ability to show each other love and respect. You're not looking for errors. You're looking to find the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, and to do what you can to make it best. Right? I mean, that's the genius of marriage with joy.
Well, that's the genius of marriage with joy in every aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
You have someone with whom you're facing whatever it is, positive, negative, the joys, and also the trials and the triumphs. You know, there are few people who will be there for you if you get cancer, God forbid. I mean, there are a few people who can even fulfill that role legally. I mean, this is a unique relationship. And if you go through life without it, then I'm sure you can be happy and you can do the best you can, but it's so much more joyful to go through life with it. So we should treasure it. Unfortunately, our culture has really changed so that people now feel they don't need it, or they feel that it can be hurtful because of their experiences. I think what we have to do is revise that so that people who stay married get the kudos that you gave to Joe Lieberman, Joe, and are able to praise and help the friends around them. Be the community that cheers marriage on. Be the friends who say, I'm so glad you're making it through this problem. I'm here for you. We're here for you. And it's great to see the two of you working together. Give them the praise that they deserve for being a team in a hostile environment, which is our country. I want to add one more thing about Joe Lieberman. Michael has been a close friend of his at least 6 years before he married Hadassah. And I've been lucky to become his friend. Every 5 years at the Yale reunion, we are with Joe and Hadassah. His class is 5 years before Michael's, so he's 5 years earlier. And but we spend time there. And when Michael does his show there, he's come on the show while we're there. And there, as you said, there is nobody more civil, polite, caring, not just positive, but he looks at the broad picture, and few politicians look beyond their own futures. And it's so wonderful that we were able to have someone who could see the whole picture and say, it isn't about party. It isn't even about policy. It's about people. And so I want to add to your praise of Joe and Hadassah Lieberman.
Thank you so much, Diane. It's yes, we are privileged to have such people in the United States of America. And I know this is what the United States breeds. This was what makes America great. We can continue to be great. We need to continue to nurture these unique beings. And part of what's we're talking about here is that family first marriage, which is what you're talking about here, this family project, is truly a unique situation. And unfortunately, there are too many obstacles today, especially in, for want of a better term, the popular press, popular media. I don't want to call it social. I think it's antisocial. social media is not social, it's antisocial. And it's particularly antisocial in the sense that it creates an isolationist mentality for people. It does not cheer on couples. It cheers on the one being, whether it's a long-legged Asian beauty strutting her stuff for 38 seconds on TikTok, well, not even 38, 6 seconds on TikTok and gets 1.5 million views, or some bizarre guy jumping off a bridge. I'm sorry to use bridge right now, into on a bungee cord or something. This is not creating what we wanted to see in the Family First project. Wonderful, Maura. What would you like to say about these, particularly either the books, because I sent you the articles and such, and the idea of being a family-oriented project called marriage?
I have several thoughts. The first thing I want to say is about Joe Lieberman. I only read about him a half hour before we got on this call. Now, I never met Joe. The only way I knew of Joe Lieberman was occasionally when I would see him on TV, and I will concur. That man had a way of conveying goodness, a good-naturedness, a good view for humanity, and goodwill. And how sad to find him gone today. But you know what? In a way, I'm thinking it's actually to his credit and maybe quite timely in that we have opportunity to share an individual whose influence meant so much, even to those who might have never met him. He's sort of like what we would consider, I don't want to say the dying breed or what used to be. But Barry, this all goes back to marriage. You said about making a difference, right? See, Joe Lieberman, as a public figure working as a representative of his state in DC on a national level, and obviously running for national office, he was making a difference. His being out there in the larger area of ideas changed the way people saw people, changed the way they saw Washington. I'm even going to tell you something else, and I love this about him. You know how sometimes with every ethnic group, you find the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I mean, I come from an Italian background. You've got things to say. You could find any ethnic background. That man was a gem, and he was a gentleman, but very wise and held to his own beliefs. I say all this. And then the fact, too, I remember he was a happily married, committed man. All of those things speak of influence, making a difference in our world. Today, we have a world that's breaking down. For decades, we have, and now this is the negative side of Washington, we have had such legislation that goes back to the 1960s that have caused couples to divorce, fathers to be out of the house, children to be without both parents, to have parents that are relying on the state rather than relying on their own ability. Someone like Joe Lieberman, and now let's work it down. People like us. Who are we? We're just people you may know in your neighborhood. Yes, you may see us occasionally on your screen somewhere. We all make a difference. And I'll tell you what else. When we are in the company of others, wherever we are, that spirit of togetherness, that spirit of commitment, starting with a marriage, long-term commitment that says, I'm staying with you because I believe in you, because I'm hoping for you, because I'm hoping for us together, because I'm believing for a better future, because we have children, because we're investing in them, we're investing in the future. All of that is our way, that I see it, of counterbalancing what has been the onslaught, the ongoing onslaught. And now we're on super fast forward here in our culture. There has been, we went from being, if you weren't married, you didn't have 4 to 6 kids, well, you just weren't in vogue. And I happen to be one of those, not by choice, but because I couldn't have more children, because that was the model. To now, decades later, we find that if you want to get married, you're sort of on the outs, because after all, it's not in vogue. It's not the cool thing to do. That is a lie. And the only way we can counterbalance that is by living out the values that are true to us. And I never underestimate the value of one couple, one family, one sense of living beings as a unit that exude love, that exude joy, that exude hope for the future. So I think I probably go to this topic a lot. We are in a culture that comes against a lot of the values that are really good and healthy and helpful, not only for us as individuals, but also for a nation and our future. And the only way we can change it, in a sense, is wherever we live, right where we are, right now, on a routine, ongoing basis. And I say we all make a difference. What do I say? And I'll stop after this. What do I say after we get off of every single conference call or every single monthly call? What do I say?
That was wonderful. And yes, the country needs it.
And thank you for bringing it to the forefront. People don't even value marriage because it is out of their mind. It's out of their focus. It's out of the spotlight. And when it does show up, it's usually something negative. And what a joy in life to be the living, breathing personification of something good that other people could look at, pick up in the ethers, and aspire to, and know that it actually exists and it is possible.
Wonderful, Maura. I want to say, first of all, a huge thank you, especially during Holy Week, to bring this up, because matrimony is holy. When we take vows, which I don't know if people even use that term anymore, but that's a sacrament. I mean, that's the way it is in the Jewish world. When we have a recognition of who we each are, it's called being Kodesh, which means being separated in a place called holiness, sanctified. And that's what we do. We sanctify this process of two beings coming together and becoming one, and from that one, bringing forth more. And by the way, it doesn't even matter even if you're not blessed to have children, or if you're blessed to have 19. The number is not the issue. It's the process, as you say, that when you and Jimmy go to a place and you're meeting people, and the fact that you're married, and you're married for more than 2 years, or 3 or 5 or 10 or 20, that just being and as opposed to saying, well, yeah, look at our marriage certificates. We're married for 18 years. You don't have to do that. Just being together and watching that interaction, that wonderful process of, as Diane says so nicely, the family project. It's quite remarkable. And you're right. Unfortunately, we are where we are. It is not in vogue today. Woodstead will come about again. There's a pendulum, right? We're all believers in that. So if the pendulum is swung to one particular place at the moment, we honestly and hopefully believe, not just because of a blind faith. I'll have to give a quote here. Faith is not blind, it's visionary. You like that quote? I heard that from someone. Faith is not blind, it's visionary. So we know as a fact that good will triumph. We need to be those soldiers. I mean, in a good sense, the soldiers of it. So thank you. Wonderful, Lori. I mean, you're in the midst of the great trend away, because you're in Southern California. And I'm sorry to say it like that. It seems more and more.
Yeah, people are like, wait, you want what do you do? I say, I help people stay married. And they're like, why?
Wait a minute. That's
why?
That's a great line, because I think that's what's happening for much younger people also. In other words, that question, you're going to get why? Why would you do that?
Why stay married? Why get married? It's so much easier being on your own. And it's so much easier being on your own for everything until you need someone, which is all the time. Human beings are not meant to be by themselves. And you only have that happen when things start going kittywampus and you're left going, what do I do? And then you've got to reach out to friends who are dealing with their own, excuse my French, shift, dealing with their own shift. Everyone's dealing with shifts. And if you're constantly dealing with shifts and you have no one to help you and your parents are busy and your siblings are busy, then you start to realize, I wish I had a best friend. I don't have any best friends. And my kids are always complaining that they don't have best friends. And I always kind of slide in, well, maybe one day you'll get married. Oh, I'm never getting married. Why? Oh, because, you and dad had that little blip. Okay. But we made it through it and we're stronger and better because of it. Yeah, well, it seems really hard. I'd just be easier living by myself. And there goes the cycle. And it's a perception, right? Because everyone keeps hearing about how terrible marriage is. You go to any bar, oh, my wife this, oh, my husband that. No one's talking good about anybody. And me all by myself, I'm trying to shift that with people. So when they are out, they're talking kindly about their spouses in front of their kids, because that will help. If we all start talking about the good of marriage instead of how terrible it is, like even if it's just like, gosh, marriage is so great because I'll have someone beside me when I'm 80. And I think that's a big fear for a lot of people. I know it is for men when they actually leave their spouse, because they say, I want to be free because I want to live my life when I'm 80. Okay. Good luck with that. But the minute something goes wrong, they want a woman right by their side. Men need women more than women need men. I'm sure Diane will agree with that.
Let's repeat.
Hold on, let me tell you this joke. There's a joke. I think I've said it before. When a wife dies, a man will remarry right away. When a husband dies, a woman gathers her friends and goes to India on vacation. There's a lot of truth to that. It's just what we need. And I do believe in family, and I believe that is one way that a family is like a nucleus of safety and security. And if you don't have a mom and a dad in a marriage building that cocoon of safety and security, people can't continue that throughout the years. But once you create that, it's like, when something goes wrong in a family and, cousin, nephew, whatever is acting up, they come in, they're like, yeah, I'm really sorry about last time. And everyone's like, yeah, sit down, we're okay. Because family members forgive each other. And that's love.
I want to go to what you said earlier, this 3-letter W word, why. So when you meet people, because you're in the business of helping, especially women, more women than men, get through a very difficult time in their lives. And oftentimes it ends in divorce. You're trying to counsel them not to, and yet the forces are arraigned against you. But when you tell people that you're married or something, they say, why? To me, that's a very telling statement. People really think that way. I mean, I don't mean to be naive, but that's what you're saying.
Yeah. So my whole job is helping people stay married. And I'll have people say, why would you do that? That's a stupid career. Why would you waste your time trying to help people stay married? It's pointless. It doesn't mean anything. Terrific.
So I think I'm speaking for all of us. And we've mentioned, I think, on previous shows that will be what I like to call the map of life, meaning and purpose. Now, can one have meaning and purpose if you're not married? Well, hello, of course. Is it more difficult? I think so. Matter of fact, far more difficult. Meaning and purpose doesn't mean that you have a pathway that is strewn with the rose petals. It means that you have the opportunity to work together on those stumbles and inevitable roadblocks and difficulties that will happen. Everything from cancer to paralysis to breakups, people doing not nice things, just stuff. The genius of two people becoming one and becoming greater in the process, that family project, is so exciting. And when somebody says to you, married, why? You say, why? Do you realize how wonderful, amazing, fabulous marriage is? Because they don't. See, part of the difficulty is, let's be blunt, is that whether it's in the I don't want to call it popular, in anything, almost everything that is seen on the anti-social media things on the rectangle, which is what my wife calls the phone, or on the tube or other places, it tends to denigrate or diminish the family project, as you said so nicely Diane. And the beauty of these two books that we've been talking about, Get Married and Family Unfriendly by Brad Wilcox, and the other one is Tim Carney, is that a family first marriage enhances every aspect of life. And when I mean every aspect of life, I'm talking about eating, right? There's nothing more basic in life than eating, right? But how wonderful isn't it to share food with people you love? Even if you don't love them at the moment. I mean, you always love them, but if you have a dinner table and there may be an argument going on or something like that, okay, so it's human interaction. We have this thing in the world today called AI, right? Everybody thinks they know what AI is, artificial intelligence. So I heard a very nice little quip recently and say, AI can't exist until you have HI, human intelligence. Without human intelligence, artificial intelligence is just a robot. You have human intelligence, you can use this artificial intelligence to enhance our processes, make life better in every sense of the word. But I'm talking about really the basic things of life, which are eating, walking. Is there any greater pleasure than walking hand in hand with somebody you love? I can't think of anything. I used to be able to skip. I can't skip anymore because of my situation. But when I do my once a week podcast on other things, and one of the things I urge people to do is to skip, either by themselves. I said, if you really want to be smart and do something beautiful, yes, do this more. You should do this quickly, soon. Is to put out your right hand and make sure you got somebody attached to your right hand and skip down the street. And if you're really somebody in life, you put out both hands and you have two beings, especially if they're little ones, kids, grandkids, anybody, just anybody. But walking is fun. Running is nice. Skipping, it just makes the heart go pitter patter, right? To me, that's what marriage is. Marriage is skipping. It's just, I mentioned, everybody knows we can skip a stone on the lake when it's like that. You throw out a rock and it goes, well, that's what marriage is like. It goes up and down and up and bouncing. Okay, finally it goes, it sinks. That's okay. It's a joy. All right, we have another round in front of us here. I want to make mention that one of the books, I think it's Family Unfriendly. So the issue there is that there are things today in America that have reversed themselves. It used to be that there were economic benefits to being married, tax breaks and things like that. And in fact, those have been reversed. So it's actually more beneficial to not be married if you're doing economic things, whether it's prenuptials or filing taxes or making sure you don't get sued because the government came after you and taking your property. Well, at least my wife is safe because we're on paper, we're not married. You know what I'm saying? Economically, we've dispersed our assets. This is a terrible situation because it doesn't promote family friendly. And in the book, he does come up with, at the end, he says that there are a number of places where family first marriages are flourishing. This is really wonderful. Certain pockets. One of those is Asian Americans. Now, it's actually, I just realized when I was writing it down, I was going to talk about it. It's hard to say Asian Americans only because Asia is the biggest continent in the world, and there are so many billions of Asians. So it's not necessarily fair because people from Thailand are different than people in the Philippines and Chinese, Japanese, Koreans. But suffice it to say that generally speaking, people from first generation Asian families have a closer bond or an old style bond than current Americans. That's number one. The other thing is they said in terms of politics, conservatives more so than liberals or lefties, more often than not have marriages and stable marriages. The other is people who are religious People who are religious believers. Now you say, well, duh, of course. Well, yes, but he also outlines that's one of the reasons why marriage has declined, and precipitously, because how should we say it? The people who espouse non-involvement with any kind of church, I mean, any kind of church, is declining quite fast. And then he talks about 3 places. This is funny, I thought. 3 places that he names in the book that are pockets of family and family and marriage oriented places. What are they? Ohio, Idaho,
Utah.
and the state of Israel. Israel, interesting enough, is one of the only countries in the entire world that has a net population gain. Almost every other country in the world has population decline. Unfortunately, Japan is a prime example. Japan, if it continues along the road it's going on, which most likely it will, 100 years from now, will have half its current population. That's craziness. Half its population, because they're not reproducing. And the younger people don't want to reproduce. Japan, Korea. Okay, we only have a few more minutes. Let's do one more round. So I want to ask you, Diane, on this high note, can you think of 1 or 2 really positive aspects when, let's say, we'll take Lori's point as to jump off, when people said marriage, why? So I know in the book, Don't Divorce, you mentioned obviously many things, but can you tell us 1 or 2 primary reasons why somebody should really consider a commitment to marriage?
Oh, I think we've been talking about it quite a bit already. Consider a commitment to marriage. First of all, marriage and commitment are synonymous. You don't have a commitment to marriage. You have a commitment of marriage to another person who is then going to be your partner in life. And I think that's the key, is that you consider the other person to be your teammate and your partner. And you cannot get that in other relationships, whereby in our society, every individual is the unit by which we evaluate laws and interactions and what people can do. But marriage is the only place where 2 people are central and recognized as such by other people. And you might as well take advantage of it, because if you're going to be by yourself, then you're going to have to rely on a set of individuals to be able to do the same thing that you could get from having a soulmate and a partner and someone to whom you can give equally. Love and giving in Hebrew are the same thing. There's a benefit to giving, and to have somebody so convenient to give to elevates you every day in every way. And I always think about making my husband coffee. I know I've said this one before. The day after we got married, he gave me a look, and it was like, well. And I didn't know coffee was his love language. It was like, now that we're married and you love me, you're going to make me coffee. I wasn't about to have coffee, but once I got it in my head, it was like, yes, I can be the one to make him coffee. And it was a pleasure. It was a privilege. There is no day that he wakes up and there is not coffee there for him. And if it happens to be that I made too much that he needed from the day before, I put it up with a little note, hey, honey, here's your coffee. I love you. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that reminds me how much I love him. And so it's reciprocal. So that's just a couple of things that come to mind when you ask the question.
Thank you. I want to go directly to Lori now on this, because I think that's part of a great answer when someone says, marriage? Why? Why would you want them to marry? And I think this is unpacking something here. It's the opportunity to be a giver.
Are you asking me? It's an opportunity. Yes. But a lot of people say, why? Why should I give to anybody? No one gives to me, because as a single person, they're looking and needing, right? They're not realizing if they start to give first, they will get everything they've ever wanted. If you want to get, not, you don't give to get, but if you become a giver, you naturally get. But if you need things, you'll still want to be taking. And if you're in that mode, you don't get much. So a lot of my single friends are constantly like, I need a plumber. I need this. I don't know who to call. I don't know what to do. They're constantly seeking instead of just being a relaxed person and say, well, maybe I should find a partner, right? Even if you have a roommate. I have this theory that people should never grow old alone. In fact, that show on Netflix, my husband and I have been watching it. It's called Live to 100. And a lot of them are married, a lot of them aren't, but they have communities where they're really close together. But that brings up a lot of other things. But it's having, even if it's just a husband and a wife, being a community together with their kids and their family and their nieces and their nephews, that's a community. Nurture that, keep that together. Don't go too far, stay close, be together and keep that family, because it will churn out generations of people that will get old and never have to go into the old folks' home.
So this is wonderful. I mentioned in the book, family unfriendly, and he mentions Ohio and Idaho in the United States, and that these are, well, they're states, obviously, and pockets within the states, that there are extended families that go several generations, like it used to be in America. The ability for kids to run down the street and see grandparents or cousins, nephews and such. If it's not part of your world, you might think, well, why? I mean, big deal. Well, it is a big deal, because I'll tell you something I learned from a man named Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor was a really one of the most powerful, for want of a better term, motivational speakers. He was in his day greater than Tony Robbins, really, and a fine fellow. And he speaks about giving and taking. And he says, if you think that giving is, like you mentioned wonderfully, Lori, giving because I want to get, well, that's trading. That's not giving. What Diane is talking about is willingly giving. And the result is graciously receiving. See, when you open up the channels of willingly giving, because you want to give, then by definition, you'll receive. It has to. That's a law in the universe. It's so dynamic, and it doesn't and can't happen when you're living by yourself, not just alone, and you're not part of a community, because you're not exercising the giving muscle, which is the most important muscle in the human being. It is the essence of the human. It's the spiritual component of, and that's the genius of marriage. When my wife makes me lunch, okay, she's not here in the room, so I can say this now. I mean, I'm crying. She doesn't see it, but I cry because it's pure vitamin L. It's amazing. My wife, Diane knows. My wife was Oriental. She's not just Oriental. She's Thai. She was raised in a certain way. When she slices a cucumber, you couldn't find a machine that could do it as well or better. And I know that every slice was done because she loves me. You can't buy that kind of stuff. So when somebody says marriage, why? Why? Hello, listen to this show. Wonderful Maura, marriage, why?
You know, how nice to end this on such a good note. And I want to echo with what I just heard and make it a very simple one. When I heard you ask that question to Diane, I thought, I didn't even want to get married because in my family, my parents stayed married for many, many years, but they weren't the best example. And they stayed married till they died. But I remember I didn't even want to get married, but I did want to marry my husband. And I knew it was because I wanted to start a new life where I could take things that were in my heart, things that were in my vision, with another person that was very dear, someone I respected, and create something new and greater. Now that looks like a big thing, but I have to make you laugh. Diane, I never heard your story about the coffee. When I got married, I didn't know what it was like to share. My husband had to show me. Now, that's been 42 years since then. Do you want to know one of the sweetest things every morning that happens? I make coffee every single night before we go to bed. Our daughter and son-in-law got us an espresso maker. It's kind of like one of those old-fashioned ones. It makes perfectly 2 large cups of coffee. He comes down first thing in the morning. He'll turn it on. He whistles to me when it's ready so he can sit at his desk. I serve it to him. He could not be any happier. And then when it's all done, he cleans it up. Now that seems so simple, right? I didn't know what that was like. I didn't grow up with that. This is 42 years, that having coffee and having it in the morning between us. It's got to be one of the most simple things between 2 people, but it's also one of the most precious and sweet. Now he's out reffing right now. We'll come home later, and after this is all over, we will sit together. We'll probably have a little glass of wine. We'll chat. We'll watch something. It is one of the quietest, simplest things to do. We'll talk about our days. People run around and buy everything. They look for everything, just as you're saying, Lori, right? They're here. I need this. I need that. I need the other thing. And when it comes down to it, what the human heart desires to give, to receive, that we can get from an enduring relationship with a marital partner where we learn and grow from each other. And I think in our case, we've probably picked up the better qualities of one another. There is nothing else like it. Simple, sublime, beautiful, and worth staying in for the long haul.
I have a question. He
Yes.
whistles. He whistles.
He does. I'm upstairs. What he'll do, he'll just whistle, and that tells me I can hear the coffee pot. Come on down. And he will wait. He's got the nicest whistle. He gets up super early in the morning, and people, and he's like this. He's done that all his life. It's the sweetest whistle. It's not like, hey, you. It's the opposite. He'll come
By the
in.
way, wait a minute, Maura, is it a whistle with lips, or does he do a whistle like?
No. Just with his lips. I don't know how to whistle, but whatever he does, it's darling. It's sweet. It's almost like he was 12 years old, and it's the thing between the 2 of us. He'll find me somewhere. He'll whistle, and I know his whistle. And it's funny, even that you're asking that, Lori. But it's
And you go running? Is that what happens? Woo!
Okay.
Not that kind.
You see what's happening right now? You just said something, Maura, that I think just exploded our whole time together. Jimmy is he's like 12 years old.
He is.
Okay. This is when somebody asks marriage, why would you do that? Youth.
Yeah.
Everybody loves youth. The genius of marriage, I think, is perpetual youth. Because youth doesn't only mean being 18 in the physical being. It means youthful outlook. It means youthful heart, a youthful spirit, a belief that things will get better. That's the genius, I think, of marriage. Why? Because I love being young. It's one of the most beautiful things in the world, and you can't find it anywhere else as much as you can in a marriage setting. I think is that true? Isn't that true? I love that whistle.
And I never even, that's one of our things. Everybody in their marriage, and that's the bigger point is, it's your marriage. It's what you make of it. It's the sweet things between 2 people that nobody else has it. And it's so special, like the coffee in the morning. And I think about my daughter and son-in-law. We had that coffee when they were at their place. They got it for us. And I said, it's so simple, but it's so beautiful. It's like the beauty and the I don't know, the beauty and the ebullience of life. And it's sweet. And I think a lot of times people are taught to look after shiny objects, to run after things, to buy things, to Botox their way through things. Not that there's anything wrong with Botox, but when you can find one person.
Wait a minute, you don't like my Botox?
You know what I'm saying. But you understand the world is always out there. We got to go find something out there so that we feel better. But to have a simple relationship where you see and grow together and serve each other, and give to the other person the very things that make them smile. There's nothing more special than that.
Wholeheartedly agree. Well, actually, there's one thing close, and that's doing a hug.
Yeah.
Which is how we complete. So, yes, again, a huge thank you to Diane, Maura, Lori, making the time, your energy, your thoughts. It's enlivening. It's absolutely precious. So thank you so much. So on the count of 3, we will do our hug with your permission. Remember, heartfelt, unlimited giving. 1, 2, 3. And our blessing from each one of us is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Bye.
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 Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.